Marty Berger is the CEO of Silverstein Properties, which is best known for redeveloping the World Trade Center. The company's founder and chairman, Larry Silverstein, leased the World Trade Center, 99-year lease, just 6 weeks before the attacks. And the company has spent the last 20 years rebuilding. Marty, welcome. We're delighted to have you with us.
Thank you, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Silverstein Properties fundamentally owned what we think of as the Twin Towers. Am I correct on that? It was a 99-year lease, but that is an effective ownership of it. How much of the rebuilding cost or the cost there was covered by any kind of insurance? I'm curious.
Well, we paid approximately $3.2 billion for the leasehold, and we received approximately $4.5 billion in insurance proceeds, which we shared with the Port Authority. But we've spent about $20 billion rebuilding what's there today, and we're not finished.
And there were, when you think of the Twin Towers that came down, those were just one part of that area of downtown that was so badly scarred. There were other buildings at World Trade Center that I understand you owned or now operate. Is that correct?
Yes, there were many buildings. There was the Vista Hotel, there was the retail below, which Westfield controlled, and there were a number of other buildings on the property, as well as 7 World Trade Center, which was not on the property. It was off the 16-acre campus, and the Deutsche Bank building, which will soon become 5 World Trade Center.
You know, buildings are just buildings, but they are also symbols of how we as humans interconnect. And take us through, I know you weren't at the company for this entire period, but you've been there long enough to know how this experience has been felt by the people at Silverstein Properties and by the people you've dealt with as you have taken such a lead role in rebuilding, redeveloping the area.
Well, it starts with Larry. Larry was the first person to say, we have to rebuild, not just for New York, but for the nation and the world. He just felt it was a duty to do it. And everyone from Larry below feels like it's a privilege to be able to work on this project and to be a part of the redevelopment of the World Trade Center. And it truly feels that way every day that we're here. It doesn't get lost on us, even 20 years later.
Take us through the effort that went into the rebuilding of some of those buildings, and clarify me, if you would, on who actually owns what is now known as the Freedom Tower, which is the grand and impressive building that stands where the original Twin Towers did. Who owns it?
Well, it's interesting. It started with 7 World Trade Center. It was the last building to come down, and thankfully no one died in that building. So we didn't have to deal with victims' families. There was no hallowed ground there. And so we were able to rebuild that building first. It also housed all the Con Ed vaults for Lower Manhattan. So everyone wanted to see that building come back up because we were on temporary power. So that building got built quickly, and in 4 years, in 2005, 2006, that building got put up very quickly and opened, and it was about a 1.7 million square foot building. We were the first tenant there, and we tried leasing, which was very difficult to do, but then Moody's came along and anchored that building, and it was the first building to reopen in that whole area. After that, we started rebuilding Daniel Libeskind's master plan. 1 World Trade Center was transferred from our ownership to the Port Authority's ownership. So the Port Authority controls it with the Durst organization. We then opened...
And 1 World Trade is the Freedom Tower. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. They stopped using that name after some time. That was the early name for it. They call it 1 World Trade Center now.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. And then other buildings down in that area, you have built back up, quite a number of them. How would you describe, for people who aren't familiar with downtown New York, and there are many millions of people have visited there, but a lot haven't, how would you describe the change that has taken place as that neighborhood has been redeveloped and rebuilt? It is much more residential and much less office dependent now, it seems to me.
I'd say that prior to 9/11, it was a very financial services-oriented office market, and now it is a 24/7 vibrant community that is not dependent on the financial services sector at all. It is very diversified into technology, into media, into advertising, into legal, and the bars and restaurants that have opened, as you mentioned in your opening, the schools that have opened, the cultural facilities like the Whitney that came downtown. We're building the Performing Arts Center there, the 9/11 Memorial Museum, the observatory that's at the top of One World Trade Center. And then just the mix of tenants that have come down there, Spotify and Uber and Group M, McKinsey, and then the law firms like Wilmer Hale and Cozen O'Connor and Kelly Dry, and then just firms that have grown up down there. Like we have the 13th stock exchange to ever become a stock exchange out of nowhere, IEX. Just fantastic companies, Casper and Diageo, all headquartered down in this area.